Hello, it's Brad Laurie, your blockchain Brad, and today we're speaking with one of the key members of ACALA, and we've recently spoken with Dan Risa, and now we speak with one of the key foundational council members, and his name is Bryan Chen. Bryan, thank you very much for making time over from New Zealand to speak with us all about ACALA and the exciting updates that have come to fruition very recently.
Yes, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, before we start, it's important that everyone knows that I do not hold any ACALA tokens, no ACA. I certainly want to be more involved in that respect. And also for educational purposes, it's important you know this is entirely free. There's no underhanded or untoward compensation for this. This is about providing key information for myself and for you and everyone in the community so we get clear, transparent information from the source. So once again, Bryan, thank you for making time in your day. Now, let's start with the exciting news of ACALA. We're just going to assume some people already know of ACALA and can go and read about the very basics. But today there was a big announcement, and that was quite simply that you have, or ACALA has won, a public parachain auction slot on the PolkaDot testnet. So congratulations. Do you want to touch on that and start with that?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, Rococo is a testnet for the parachain. So we have been doing a lot of parachain testing on Rococo for quite a few weeks already. So previously, Rococo is just sort of like permission. So Parity will talk with each teams and they figure this thing is ready, then we onboard this thing to a parachain. So we've doing a lot of testing on Rococo for a while, including a lot of question message passing, question token transfer, etc. So I think 2 days ago, probably, they have reset the Rococo, so start a new testnet, start from scratch. But this time include the crowdloan functionality and the parachain slot auctioning. So they also start a parachain auction. So 1 day, well, roughly, I don't know, 36 hours, something ago. So this is the first public crowdloans, or first public parachain auction, slot auction in the Rococo, well, in the Polkadot ecosystem, but just this is on the testnet. So we start the crowdloan in the Rococo, and so as well as a few other things also start their own crowdloans, and some other things also just betting the slot directly. I think in the last night, or this evening, this morning time here, so the first crowdloan auction ends, so we won the slots for the next 4 days, I believe. So yes, so things are keeping fast. So currently I'm just thinking, how do we secure the next batch of slots?
Yes, and that's the challenge because it is an ongoing thing, and we're going to explore that. So for those who aren't familiar with ACALA, make sure that you read through some of the documentation below, but we're going to move forward into some of these key terms today and push into discussions about parachains, crowdloans, crowdsourcing, a new kind of mechanism beyond the ICO, IEO, IDO methods. So let's extend this a bit more. So the success in winning the key auction slot today, but what does that mean and how is it going so far? I know it's early days, and when this interview does go out post-editing, it may be a day later, but it's always going to have challenges even from the outset. So do you want to open up the transparent discussion here, considering it is so novel, it's so new, and we're still in that trial phase?
Yeah, so it's sort of like first time we actually tried this in a public testnet. Like we have tried this internally in our internal testnet for a few times, but we haven't tried this public with setups that it will be more production ready. Or it's still nowhere, the configuration is still nowhere near the what Kusama is going to have. But at least we have more things involved. We have Party involved. We have many other things involved to do this testing together. That's the whole point of a public testnet, because it's very hard our own private testnet doing this level of testing with so many parties involved. So we should get a try and see how it works. And a lot of people have questions and misunderstanding, need clarifications on how things works. And we also spend time figuring out exactly, for example, the crowdloan UI is very new. It's a very new features they just implemented. So there are things that obviously needs improvement and things that are a bit confusing. So we just trying things out to also helping improving everything, basically.
Got it. So the UI, it's always going to be challenging when you launch something. You must have spent some time though in preparation making sure that some of those key bugs were eliminated. But there are obviously going to be some glitches as people start to experiment. There's also so much hype and so much, I guess, interest in these parachain auctions as well. Now, you mentioned something interesting, that was Kusama. So let's discuss this further. Now, ACALA, for those who are wondering, that's the DeFi hub, essentially has a built-in stablecoin also inside its platform. But you also, we see almost like its sister system with the likes of Karura. And then we hark back to, again, the key platform technologies and key protocols, and that they are obviously PolkaDot and Kusama. So do you want to just touch on this? Because you did mention Kusama and it seemed like you were very optimistic the way you said that. So why would that be the case? And why is Kusama so integral to the success of ACALA even?
Yeah, so initially a lot of people viewing Kusama as just a testnet and wondering why a testnet token was going to worth any money at all. But actually Kusama is not a testnet, it's a canary network. So a common example people already understand is compared to Bitcoin with Litecoin. So Litecoin is have a huge market value compared to many other tokens. That is one of the reasons it's kind of a canary network for the Bitcoin already. So people get it's like block time is much faster, and all the new features will get tried on Litecoin before they're landing on Bitcoin. So there's a similar thing between the Kusama and Polkadot. Things happen much faster in Kusama, and all the new features will land on Kusama first. And if they're proving working, and then they will be land on Polkadot. So you'll be able to try all the bleeding edge features on Kusama first. So Karura will be connecting to Kusama and will share the similar property.
Got it. So again, you have Karura directly connected as the DeFi hub for Kusama. That's the playground for the experimentation, especially for devs who perhaps don't want to utilize the complexity of the Polkadot relay chain. And also in that respect, obviously making that's a more complex process as a parachain. But beyond that, I want to talk about things like auditing and clarify this once again. I often talk with Betty Chen about this and other members of your foundational team. Many people suppose or incorrectly suppose that there aren't many audits being done on Kusama, but that's not the case. Is that correct?
Well, so first, there's only a single code base. So the underlying framework is a substrate. And then there's a Polkadot, and most of Kusama and Polkadot, they share in the same code base. So obviously the auditing, you cannot just auditing Polkadot code without auditing Kusama code. That just doesn't make sense. So yeah, so all the code is being audited. It just, there are a few things. So first, configuration of between those networks will be different. So one, for a common example would be the staking unbounding time on Polkadot is 28 days, on Kusama is only 7 days. So things happen much faster. And another thing is a few new features only exist in Kusama. That doesn't mean they are not audited, or it just or people don't experimenting things on Kusama.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what about cost? My understanding is that it's much more palatable or much more enticing to utilize something like Kusama, for example, for your everyday dev.
Yeah, well, with the current Kusama token price in rise, this part is about a bit hard to like. We're not sure what's going to happen, but the cost of a Kusama project should be cheaper than Polkadot. It's just because the Polkadot have a higher market cap, and also that Polkadot will be in a place there where more serious application will be land on. Like if people have doing like billions of dollars, and they want to put on a really secure network, that will be the Polkadot. Kusama will be slightly less secure as it have a less market cap. But obviously the advantage will be it'll be hopefully much cheaper to secure a slot, and everything, like including transaction fees, will be cheaper.
Yes, and it makes me wonder also in the context of enterprise and business, sometimes people will forgo the gold star security for the significant difference in cost. And I suppose that may happen. It may eventuate where we see some of those risks taken on board by some parties as they want to experiment because of the same code base issue, as you mentioned. The reality is that there are those protections in place. And also the other issue is the rising costs recently, or the rising price rather, obviously related to partly the speculation of expectation of the success of Kusama, has led to questions, I think, of how expensive is it actually going to be for parties wanting to engage in this comparatively? And will we see this continue in the future? Very likely. And so what impact will that have on Karura, for example?
Yeah, well, it's hard to predict the futures, but the first thing is Karura, well, we're trying to Karura, the Crowdloan is giving rewards for all the contributions from the Crowdloan, and this is pretty much all the impacts. That is just like one KSM is still one KSM, so the rewards you're getting is probably per KSM is still same amount of the Karura tokens. So in that sense, it doesn't have real impacts to us, but of course, if you convert to dollar term, the number will be slightly different.
Yes, that makes sense. Now, obviously, when we're talking about Karura and we're talking about ACALA, we're talking about DeFi in a totally new frame with regard to the often assumed relationship between Ethereum and DeFi. We are talking about simply expanding the discussion, bringing it to a global sort of context, and really challenging that problematic notion that there is one specific blockchain for DeFi. We know that's not true. Technologically, you're breaking down all of those misconceptions with real bridges, technological and very robust, I guess, comprehensive ones at that, with Plasm, for example, with your messaging system that's been built in there with the EVMs by ACALA. Exciting stuff's really happening right across this landscape. So let's discuss that, I guess, with relation to the protocol that underpins everything, and that's the multi-chain protocol. That's the whole design of Polkadot. Do you want to just touch on the three tiers or the three layered system so people understand you have that bedrock multi-chain that upholds even ACALA?
Yeah, so the architecture is basically we have a Polkadot on the bottom layer, so it secures everything, and then people are sometimes referring as a layer 0, and then we have each parachains, so there will be ACALA, Prism, etc. So each parachain will be sort of layer 1. So we have our own functionalities, and then people were talking about like there's only 100 parachain slots. They're probably not enough. Like we're going to have a lot of DeFi applications. Well, we're going to have a lot of dApps. 100 is not enough, but the thing is, each individual parachains, well, they can be one single dApp, but it can also host a lot more number of dApps. So each of them is equivalent to Ethereum, basically. And then, so we have another layer, so that we can easily build layer 2 solutions, both based on the layer 1 solution, or we can just also all the layer 1 solutions will also have the smart contract platforms, and then people can also deploy their own smart contracts in the layer 1 parachain.
And that's a big deal. I think more than I can even explain if we break this down, but I'm going to try. So if we use Ethereum, for example, as an example, not to suggest it's an equivalent parachain, but we know A, it has the network effects, B, it's already established as a smart contract platform, layer 1 by design, and also has, vast number of applications, good, bad, and ugly, all built on because it is an open source system. Now, if we move across to the parachains for a moment, 100 initially is planned over the course of several years, I would imagine, and that's already starting to begin as of today, for example. But in this context, I want to talk a bit more about the potential and scope of all of the Polkadot network when we consider the magnitude of Ethereum as one, equivalent type of parachain-like design, in that even though it has a separate language, Gavin did write that, you're building in these composable with truths technologically to make this seamlessly bridged into the Polkadot world. So because of all of those things, we see the potential of ACALA in using Ethereum as a guide, and then we can times that by another, by 100 literally for the future. So do you see what I'm getting at? Am I trying to get people to understand the real potential of this system? We can use the knowledge of Ethereum to really understand this is so much bigger than just one example of a smart contract platform we've seen in the past.
Yeah, so like a lot of people are saying Ethereum is just a test ground for the Gavin built by Gavin Wood. They tried this thing and found out, well, that might not be the best idea. So he start building a Polkadot aims to address a lot of issues on Ethereum. So basically on Ethereum is one of smart contract platforms running a lot of DeFi applications, but Polkadot is much more than, for example, just 100 Ethereum combined together. It's much more than that, because we will have a special purpose focused parachains where we have some generalized smart contracts platforms. Like for example, ACALA will be a special focus, DeFi focused parachain, where offers a few DeFi protocols, where at the same time we'll offer a smart contracts platform. but the smart contract platform will be designed to suit the purpose of DeFi applications. So if you are not building DeFi applications, well, you could probably build on some other smart contract platforms. But if you're building DeFi applications, you will be able to leverage a lot of unique features that only exist within the ACALA EVM to just help you to build the DeFi applications. So with those, we can achieve a lot of things that simply cannot be done with, say, 100 Ethereum connect together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the specialized, customized aspect of each of the parachains, the differentiators are going to be key to attracting and garnering interest in the enterprise sector, especially when it comes to Polkadot, because obviously that's the higher cost gold standard when it comes to the parachain auction. People are going to be vying for that, for those use cases. Now, when it comes to Kusama, I imagine it's the same thing in that you're still going to have that replicated sort of 100 potential parachains there as well. Is that the case?
Yeah, so the plan for Kusama, well, it will be fairly similar, but of course we will see a lot of more experimental things happening. Like, for example, probably we will see a lot of experimental projects they will try it on Kusama, but they're just probably not going to happen on Polkadot. Just another thing is that the 100 parachain slot is just a arbitrary number defined in the first Polkadot white paper, but in reality, we may have more, we may have less. It's all up to how much number the parachain can support. So it's definitely a goal that like people will be optimizing towards to, but it's totally possible. We can have, say, 150 parachain running fine, and it's still properly fine. So there's no reason to not add more. But it's totally possible we have, say, 50 parachains, then there will be some things that need to be optimized to keep increasing. So yeah, we don't have a real number here.
Right. Well, I'm really excited to see each of these unfold in time. And I think the key is just allowing that time as well to make sure that things are done, with proper checks and balances, with the right processes as well. But if we also explore quite simply the nature of the code as well, it's open source. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in that sense, are you ever concerned about things like appropriation, things like misuse of code, or, well, I guess you can't really say that, but the fact that things are open source, we see things like the scenario I've been trying to coin, or the term, there's Polkadot and then there's PolkaNOT, and in that respect, I wanted to touch on this quite sincerely because I want to make sure we really support the correct, true, and authentic Polkadot. And Dan Risa was saying recently, who's also a team member of ACALA, that there really is only one way to measure what is truly a Polkadot startup, and that is the connections it has to the parachain networks. So what are your thoughts on this, based on the reality that we do see all kinds of things happening out there that have a Polka prefix, but may not necessarily be a Polkadot?
Yeah, so we see lately we see a lot of projects that simply some of them they don't even have any code, some of them they do have code, but it's the most basic template code that does nothing other than running a blockchain, does nothing. Some of them is just simply copy paste some projects, including some of our code, and maybe a few other people's code, and then claim, well, they have something working, which, well, they don't have their own code. So yeah, this is definitely something concerning. Yeah, so this also we can totally see, for example, the Uniswap V3 just released recently. They're using the business source license, so which is not technically an open source license. It's more of eventually open source license, try to address this issue.
Right. Okay. So in the future, obviously, even legals are going to have a significant position as Polkadot builds out, just to make sure that you protect the brands that emerge and protect the integrity, even though it's an open source context. Still want to make sure that there is that true and authentic connection to the Polkadot tech stack and tech ecosystem. So it's going to be one to watch, because a lot of people are confused, I think, at the moment by the use and potential misuse of Polka in that respect. So it's something I think people need to be really savvy about in this very volatile, very interesting, and very convoluted landscape we call crypto. So you clarified the multi-chain protocols. Thank you for doing that. Now, what about Compound? Now, this is really interesting because we've seen all kinds of maximalist ideologies come from certain camps from the Bitcoin, not all of them. Some of them are really open-minded, actually. And then we see also within the Ethereum camp, certain tribal sort of sentiment driven by a certain crew within the landscape, within that sort of space, and that sentiment's trying to suggest that only in Ethereum can there be DeFi, and only in that landscape can there be true, decentralized financial applications, that enfranchise change in the direction that we're all advocating for. So now then we see the likes of Compound, for example, who has been a bedrock, stakeholder in the narrative of DeFi for Ethereum, now start to have dialogue with ACALA. Now, what does all this mean for us? Bryan, tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah, first of all, I will believe a multi-chain future. So also Compound, they also have the similar vision as well. So they don't want to just build a Ethereum DeFi protocol. They want to make a multi-chain. So that's one of the reasons they make it's now called Gateway. So it's the Compound chain. So it aims to support not just Ethereum ERC20s, but also other ecosystem projects like Polkadot, Solana, and maybe a few other layer 1 chains as well. So obviously this will be a super useful thing to have. So the gateway or the Compound chain is built with Substrate. They have done some research and figure out, wow, this is probably the best blockchain building framework that suits the purpose. So that's one of the reasons they pick Substrate. So with the building a Substrate, they want to connect into the Polkadot ecosystem. So how the Compound gateway is the gateway itself is a POA chain, proof of authority chain, and there's a starport on each individual layer 1 chain. So they will starport on Ethereum, and they will starport on some other EVM compatible chains, but Polkadot is not an EVM compatible chain. Polkadot is not going to have smart contracts. So they are very unlikely will be able to deploy a starport code in the Polkadot itself. So they need to pick a parachain. So ACALA we have make proposals to the Compound so that we can start building the starport together.
And that is a huge thing. I mean, I think that I like to reiterate what you just said for everyone to understand. Polkadot itself doesn't have that EVM compatibility, doesn't have the smart contract built into the system, and therefore it really valorizes and uplifts the integrity and value of ACALA even more. Plasm also, and several others actually, because they have that built-in messaging or built-in EVM composable and compatibility, hence the composable with initiative that's come forth with ACALA. So that's a really big deal when it comes to trying to bridge and trying to work with Ethereum, or within true examples like Compound. So is it fair to say also that Compound's just an example of what's to come for ACALA, in that no doubt there'll be other DeFi startups, DeFi applications, DeFi key projects as well. And then obviously Compound is a cornerstone project of the Ethereum network. I'd imagine this is only going to grow even beyond Compound itself.
Yes, we're talking with a lot of people. Well, a lot of teams, they start figuring out multi-chain will probably be the future. So they start looking at multi-chain deployments, and obviously ACALA will be one of the targets if they aim to deploy on the Polkadot ecosystem.
So basically there's this reciprocity technologically, so cash coming across to Polkadot, to ACALA rather, and then through the Starport palette, there's the use of DOT and the L dot for Compound, so that's this true swap.
Yes.
Okay, so that's big, because once again, we see the likes of, for example, media entities or over in Ethereum like Bankless. We see others like The Block with their reporting. Often there is this nuance that, Ethereum's doing certain things, especially with Bankless, for example. They are often releasing information that suggests that Ethereum is the center of DeFi. ETH Hub do the same, but I don't know if that's actually the reality when we have these discussions. Perhaps so far, but in the future, ACALA's creating a new narrative for DeFi, and it's either a case of everyone catch up and get on board or get left behind. So do you think these narratives that have been put forth from Ethereum, for example, with this sort of from certain stakeholders that ETH equates to DeFi, do you think that's going to change? Do you think that proof will lead the narrative and code will lead the proof, and these bridges will lead the proof that things are going to change?
Yeah, so things are constantly changing. The whole reason we're building blockchains is because when believe the mainstream finance or this will be DeFi or the mainstream like a lot of traditional things will need a breaking change. So that's one of the reason we have Bitcoins and Ethereum and all the DeFi applications. So I see we'll just constantly doing those breaking existing things and build new things out of it. So like we want to constantly evolving and just build something better.
Yeah, and it's a good answer, I think, because even in that, you sound like Gavin in that you're trying to support, collaborate, and just build upon what's there. And even within the Ethereum context, is certainly uphold and respect what has been built by them. And in no sense is there a suggestion of competition, but more about expanding on the technologies of the past. And really, that was an example of what was there, and now you can use the layer one that Gavin's built and build this infrastructure through the layer ones and then above with the applications. So it is a really exciting time because we're now seeing the emergence of something extensive, vast, and very replete with a lot of different components, and that is the whole Polkadot eco. So let's discuss a little bit more about, I guess, the bootstrapping process of the crowd loans and the crowdsourcing technique that's used, because I think people need to understand exactly how this differs from the ICO and the IDO models, particularly because it's alleged to be fairer by the design that you've put in place.
Yeah, so this, the crowdloan idea is super fascinating. So in the ICO, traditional ICO is people give, people contribute ETH or some other tokens to the projects, then project takes some money, give them some tokens back, but now they have money. They don't have that much incentive to actually complete the project.
It's true. And let's be real, many of them dump when they can, don't they?
Yeah. So right. So this is the problem of ICO. And the crowdloan is doing something totally different. So people can help the projects by contributing the tokens, relation tokens, to help them to secure a parachain slot in the relation. But the token is still the token. The parachain slot or the projects, they don't take people's money. Instead, people just help to bid a slot and kind of give the slot to the parachain project. The slot by itself, it's like a land. An empty land does absolutely nothing. Like it doesn't make money, just accrue the money from the land.
Right.
Like we need to build something on the land. We probably want to build a factory, build a supermarket, build a shopping mall, build something that will actually create value out of the land. So it's up to each parachain. We need to be responsible for. So people give us a land. So we need to build and this only have limited lease, probably 2 years. So we need to, in this 2 years time, we need to build something useful, actually creating values. And then we'll be able to continue sustain the lease in the future. So that we're not going to, if we don't do anything, then after 2 years, the land will be taken away, then we have nothing left.
Yeah, and I think it's a great analogy, really, because if we continue on that idea of the land, obviously there's incentives for all of us in the space to research what is going to go on that land, what is going to be built from the ground up, literally. And so I guess it's beholden and behooves us to go and make sure we understand the quality of the team, the tech, the code, etc. Because if you're going to support the land, for example, of something with no intent to build anything, obviously that's going to hark back to the problems of the past. And so it really creates a bit more transparency. Now, let's go through how that is the case, though, because you mentioned an important thing, and that is time. That's an element built in with the 2-year lease periods, common for things like ACALA. But then there's also this unpermissioned candle auction structure that harks back to the centuries ago, but implies transparency and democracy, because it allows everyone to participate in a very open setting. So do you want to touch on this? Because I think that people need to understand why you chose it and how it allows us to participate in a fairer scenario than things we've seen in the past in crypto.
Yes. So the candle auction is used for the parachain slot auctioning. So basically the auction have two phases. The phase one is where everyone can place the bid, and obviously the highest bid will be kept. And then when transition to the phase two, there's a period that they will light a candle, and the candle will end at any random time at this period. So it will be retrospect deciding. So when the phase two ends, it will retrospect decides when the candles ends. and the winner join the ending block will be the actual winner. So so this is randomly decided, so no one will know exactly which block they will be ending. So one of the main reasons of doing this is to avoid the auction sniping. So people will just try to place the bid on the very last block to avoid being sniped.
Like we see on eBay.
Yes, exactly. But now we have the second phase, so you can still place your bid on the very last block on the first phase, but then people can still bid on the second phase. But if you want to do it at the very end of the second phase, there's a very high chance your bid just not get accepted. So now you don't have the clear timelines or where the last actual block it is. So people should just try to, well, put all your bids up front, because if you're doing too late, it just doesn't count.
Yes.
Yeah, so the main purpose of us is allow smart contracts also be able to participate the auctions. So it's because the smart contract strategy is, well, it should be open source and everyone can see the smart contract strategy. And then the human will have like unfair advantage of it. But with the candle auction setups, then, well, people don't really get any advantages.
Yeah, and what's great too, not only do you have that transparency and you also have, I guess, the evidence on the code, but you allow for anyone literally globally to be able to participate. And that's something quite unique compared to the past in terms of which they want to support. Now, I wanted to ask you also, what's the incentive for that for the individual contributor, the individual participant? How are they advantaged through the process? Say, for example, there is a success and there is, for example, like ACALA today, there's a win. With staking processes, for example, or bonding, how does that work and incentivize those who take part in that?
Yeah, so the whole point, the whole Crowdloan module design is there, so people can contribute. And after the contribution finishes, we can see who are the contributors and how much they have contributed. And then it's up to each individual project to decide how to provide incentive to the contributors. So taking ACALA or Karura as examples, they will have reserved certain amount of our tokens used as rewards for the contributors. So we don't have a hard limit on, I would say, when the KSM equal to this many Karura, because, well, we don't know how many KSM will be required to win auctions. We don't know how many KSM will be the winning bid. So it's really hard for us to give you a number, say, 1 KSM equal to this KR, but we will reserve certain portion of KR to reward to all the contributors. We also have doing other things. So, for example, we might have some special events to pick some lucky people out of the contributors and give them a bit more.
Okay, that's good. So that's also a great way to create more attention, a bit like the bounty programs you see. It's always very successful to garner more support. Now, what about the lockups themselves? In the past, we know that secures a lot of confidence in the market because it's a more long-term plan. It's also very transparent because of the beauty of the blockchain. But that's all built into the model, as I understand, with the crowd loans as well. So there's an expectation, of long-term support. So do you want to touch on that as well?
Yeah, so when we create the crowd loan, we need to decide how long is the slots lease we want to bid for. So for PolkaDot, we will have like 4 options: 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, or 2 years. For Kusama, we actually don't have the solid answer right now because I don't think this is being determined at right now. But it's very likely the maximum lease will be either 1 year or 2 year. So we will probably aim for the maximum lease slot. And we also did a survey previously to see how many people are interested, like which option people are preferring. We actually found quite significant people they just willing to bid for a year or even more. So we'll probably go with this way. But so obviously, when you contribute your tokens, you'll be locked, and during this locking period, you will have no staking rewards. But of course, you have no possible of stash, so your token will just sit there. So as long as after 2 years, so the same amount of token you will get back. So as long as for example, token price did not go down in 2 years, so in some sense you're not losing anything. But at the same time, we'll give you some like our token rewards. So they hopefully will be able to compensate for the staking rewards.
I see. Now, one of the things I thought was interesting is that, there are these very strong staking models built into the overall design of the crowd loans themselves. But are you ever concerned as a team about the utility nature of the token itself when it's designed for use? It's designed to be, and it's going to have a high demand. There's no question. We can see that already. But if everyone's staking, if everyone's valuing these as something as a real asset, do you worry that you might not have enough for the utility intended as you build out a very, very significant platform that is ACALA, especially when you're going to have a lot of dApps utilizing the protocol as well?
Well, so for the Polkadot itself, the Polkadot have many purposes, and one of them, actually, I was talking with other people today, say the Polkadot is actually one of the POS chain that tokens have real utility other than just staking. A lot of POS chain, like you can stake the token and pay for transaction fee, and that's all the utility you can get. Polkadot have some other utility you can use for Crowdloans. You can use it for governance. You can use it to, for example, create your own chain identity, etc. So, so the main goal of one of the main purpose of Polkadot is to secure parachain. So all the token economics designed for this way. So I don't think we'll have any issues because for example, the target staking reward percentage and all the financial parameters is all designed to make sure this can be done securely and also can be done without hurting the token holders.
Okay, that's good to know. So fundamentally, just to clarify, is it correct in saying that the KSM and DOT or DOT are the two that are used for the staking in the process of the crowd loans? Yes. And thus the ACA, the ACALA, is still fundamentally that utility that's utilized within the ACALA ecosystem?
Yes. So for example, if you participate in the Polkadot crowd loans, you need to stake or bound your dots to contribute your dots to the crowd loan. And as a reward, you're getting ACA as rewards. So ACA on ACALA will also sort of multi-purpose token. So first, obviously, it's a governance token you can use to participate in the governance. Then second, obviously, it can be used to pay for the transaction fees. There are also other tokens. So it will be acting as the gateways to access a lot of features of ACALA. For example, ACALA EVM. If you want to deploy smart contracts, you will need to have certain amount of ACA tokens, or you can seeking for governance to help you, so you can deploy things for free. So we have a lot of designs. So the fundamental goal is to make sure first thing is secure, make sure the network is secure. People cannot, for example, just spam the network. If the fee is way too low, people can just spend all the random data to the blockchain, so hurting the sustainability of the network. So the security is also always the top priority. The second thing is always the governance. We want to make sure the token holder is able to influence the network in the way they want to. So so people can use the governance to decide. For example, we have a decentralized sovereign wealth fund, so they can decide how we would like to spend all the money in the fund. Like the easiest decision would be just buy all the dots, and then on the next parachain auctions, we can just bidding without the fund in the decentralized sovereign wealth fund. Or they could say, hey, maybe we want to buy, for example, this particular project's token to support them. That is totally possible. So this will be one of the main interesting usage of the ACA token.
And it's interesting too, because you've obviously gone through the very rigorous legal process to ensure you have a true and authentic utility. I've talked to Betty Chen about this before, one of your colleagues. And it's apparent to me that the utility is first and foremost the intent of that token, and it's retained by all these different facets as you talked about. Governance being one aspect of those, not a governance token per se, like as is often confused. But what's also interesting too, I think, is that as these parachains, start to unfold and evidence themselves on the Polkadot ecosystem and the Kusama one, you're going to see rewards, no doubt, in the native tokens of each of these parachains. Is that the way it will play out?
Yeah, this will be the most likely.
Right. Well, that's exciting because it means people will start to tinker and experiment right across all the blockchain, parachain landscape, which is, again, where it harks back to the narrative of blockchains as opposed to blockchain. I also wanted to ask you a bit more about your thoughts more generally on what we're seeing currently with this propensity for fast and furious launches on pads. I sincerely want to ask you because you often see, as you alluded to, sometimes there's no code. Sometimes there is, but there's mechanisms, there's methodologies put in place to just really create this immediate, hit, this, almost super drug for the attention of a particular platform or token or technology or lack thereof, depending on what it is. Does it ever concern you about that approach comparatively when we're talking about these kinds of innovations for reasons you discussed of the crowd loan and of the crowdsourcing system? Are we needing to do more of this more generally across the board? Do we need a shift in democratic thinking when we know that so many are pushing for 100x, 200x? We still see the dumping grounds real. We see OTC rife, with trying to exit. What are your thoughts on these things?
Yeah, so like all these ICO ideal-ish thing, well, not all, but many of them are really not that great. So we only have, it's not building incentive that in the right way. So the crowd loan, on that hand, that helps people that first, they cannot lose their principal money. Second, it's still able to contribute and help the project. So I think we definitely want to see something towards on this direction, so we can align this incentive in the correct manner. So previously, ICO, people doing ICO is because, well, there's no other better way to projects need money and people want to help the project, but there's just no other better way to do that. So now we have the new possibilities, and now we can see maybe this way is better. So hopefully in the future, so instead of new project just doing ICO to raise money, we can build some better tools, maybe based on crowd loans, maybe based on some other mechanisms, but sharing the same principles that make sure the incentives are aligned correctly, make sure the projects are actually able to deliver a high quality product. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how this can be done, but I see this will be a future we want to moving towards to.
And considering that initially we're seeing that ballpark number of 100, do you think that's going to stifle the potential of this kind of democracy and this ethics that are built into this, in the sense that, wouldn't it be great if there were so much more than 100, let's say thousands, tens of thousands that could be done in this way? Do you think that there'll be ways in the future where it will move beyond just the parachain potential, but people will copy, hopefully, a better model? Perhaps there'll be influence over in the Ethereum sort of camp as well, as technologically affords this kind of development innovation, if it indeed does. So we see more democratic experimentation right across the globe.
Yes, it's actually, like, for example, possible to build some special smart contracts on Ethereum. So when people raise money, they don't actually get the money, but instead, for example, they save the Ether or whatever tokens to compound, and the project only taking the interest from the compound, this kind of thing. It's totally possible to build it, but no one is doing that. But now we can see, PolkaDot people do it this way. It's getting, for example, or hopefully getting great results, and then people on other chains will see maybe this is the better way. Maybe we should try this, and maybe they will try it and see if they actually improve. That helps helps everyone.
Well, it's productive pressure, that's for sure, and hopefully we also see the breakdown of some of these closed networks where we just see the same pattern of the same investors in core groups. That happens. I've seen it too. Again, this method opens up that dialogue by tech design, not by who in the early game. And so I think that's what's exciting for the retailer, for the everyday person. We want to see more of this open up for everyone to have access. So Parity and Web3, that's one thing I also want to ask you about. You have strong connections there. You are colleagues with many of those in those two key areas of research and development as foundations as well. How's everything going in those discussions and developments in relation to ACALA?
Well, so So things are moving, well, sometimes very fast, sometimes a bit slow, but it's mostly because people are spend all the time debugging things, trying to figure out what's wrong. In general, it's moving. It's doing good. So, like for example, I personally just almost every day just asking Parity people or Web3 Foundation people about these different either technical questions or maybe token economic questions or maybe proposing suggestions on implementing certain features. The one of the focus is right now is on the cross-chain message passing, the actual message cross-chain protocol. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how it needs to be done, actually spend some time implementing some of the features and contribute into the Polkadot and into the Cumulus, the parachain building toolkit.
Well, that's exciting because we saw Sota, and I think even Betty, they both were very excited about that cross-chain messaging. They both knew how that was a major step in the right direction for all of blockchain development, not just even in the Polkadot and Kusama verticals. And so as a result, we see technologies that are now creating these bridges, literally leading the narrative so that things can be done right across the board, whether it be Cosmos or Ethereum or some other very expedient blockchain. There's so much going to happen and light up the synapses of the blockchain brain in the future. And you're part of that reason why it can be done in ACALA. So it's very exciting times. I just wanted to thank you, obviously, for everything as well today, Bryan, because you're providing key information from the source. There is no better, and you're doing it with your own time and doing it freely, which I really appreciate. So for those who'd like to know more, I'll make sure we'll put as much of the description and links of all the different ACALA contacts, their socials, and most importantly, some key documentation. But Bryan, is there anything you'd like to say to finish off? Considering that there's been a major event today with ACALA, if there's anything you think that perhaps people need to crystallize their understanding, anything at all you'd like to add on?
Well, so I just think with a bright future still, like super exciting is what is going to happen this year. Like with Parachain launch and then with the Karura launch on Kusama, then we can just see what we build for like more than a year actually running live, actually producing values, and then we probably will see, hopefully see people building inside the Karura EVM and building like their own smart contracts and deploy things that cannot be done otherwise in other smart contract platforms. So yeah, super exciting and looking forward to see this happening.
Absolutely. So DeFi is the key word here, and certainly in the context of two very important hubs, and that's ACALA and also Karura, and really innovating, making sure that they're building upon those key platforms of Polkadot and also Kusama. So for those who want to know more, understanding all the different tech stack, most importantly, understanding these collaborations between ETH-DeFi with the examples we've talked about today with Compound, moving across into the likes of, for example, the smart contract platforms of ACALA, with Plasm, and many other innovations that are happening. Make sure you look into those. And also really understand the key word of multi-chain when it comes to lighting up what is very possible and plausible when it comes to all different kinds of blockchains, not just those designed by Polkadot either. And that's where this is getting really exciting, because once again, it's the layer zero that's the hero and building up in that vertical stack. So thanks again, Bryan, for leading this narrative, for discussing this today. And hopefully sometime we can catch up again for a take two. We can explore key perspectives or key components of the ACALA network as you grow, as you build. But congratulations once more on this exciting news that the Parachain now is live and open, and certainly the slot has happened for ACALA today.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, really looking forward to it.